In this example, we'll talk about some advanced features of the Chrome control inside an xDialog. So you can see that we have a simple xDialog over here that is using the Chrome control, and when we run the Chrome control we can see that we have some buttons and an input control. But when I click these buttons right now, nothing happens. So let's go take a look now at what's going on behind the scenes. So if we look at the HTML over here, before we do that, let's just point out that this HTML is being transformed by this helper function, and in this helper function we're specifying that we'd like to use the built-in style sheet that's available for web applications called Mob Blue, and therefore in the HTML here on the class name on the buttons we've used style and then button. So this curly bracket style is a placeholder that's going to get replaced inside this function with Mob Blue. So if I were to go and change this to a different style, I wouldn't have to go and edit the HTML because this placeholder style will just get replaced. But if we look at this HTML, we can see that there's no event handler here on the buttons. So the click events do nothing there. In fact, there is no click event defined. So now I'm going to go here and press this button here that says add event handler for button 1, and after I do this, when I click now on button 1, we can see that some code got executed. But when I click on button 2, nothing still gets done. Now I'm going to go here and add the event handler for button 2, and now when I press on button 2 we can see that some code got added. So let's go now behind the scenes and take a look at what these two XBasic buttons do. So there's the button for button 1. It calls an event called add event, and then here's the button for the second button that calls add event 2. So let's go here and look at add event. So the first one is calling, so add event is over here, and we can see that basically we're calling the Chrome object, that's CP, which is this CP over there. We're calling its add event listener function, and this takes an argument called mapping, and the syntax for mapping is the name of the element that we'd like to map, the event name that we'd like to bind, and then the xDialog event to fire. So here we go, and you can see that we're basically adding an event to the ID, to the element called button 1. So there's button 1 over there. So then we're adding the click event, and then the xDialog event that we'd like to fire is called xBasic event 1. So there's xBasic event 1, and it just brings up a message box. So let's quickly go ahead there and do that. Click the button to bind the event, and now if I click there we can see that it says xBasic event fired. So this example shows how you bind an xDialog event using the add event listener. But the next example you can see here, instead of calling an xDialog event, we've now got an equal sign over there, and then we're calling my local function, and we're basically passing in two arguments, add event 2 and also local variables. So my local function is just an xBasic function that is defined locally over here, and you can see we're passing in the first argument string, which is going to be add events 2, and then the second argument local variables, which is going to be able to see the dialog title that was used over here. So when we go ahead there and press this button, nothing happens. Then go and bind the event, and now we can see we've called into the xBasic function directly, and there's the first argument that was passed in, and there's the Chrome test, the value of the dialog title inside local variables. So let's pause now and just pick this up in the next video. So we've just shown how you can use the Chrome objects add event listeners method to add event listeners to different elements in the HTML. Now let's show how you can use the get attribute and set attribute and set inner HTML methods of the Chrome object to do certain manipulations on the HTML that would otherwise have been done by executing JavaScript. So let's go ahead now and run the component, run the script, and you can see now that I'm going to click this button called Set Attribute, and what it just did was it changed the inner HTML of that div and also put a red border around it. So let's go and take a look now at how that worked. So you can see there's that button, Set Attributes, and it calls the the button with the event handler set1. So here's the code. So you can see we're calling the set attribute method of the Chrome object, and this method takes the ID of the element we'd like to manipulate, the attribute that we'd like to set. So we'd like to set the style attribute, and then the value. So we'd like to set the style attribute to some CSS text here. So border solid 1 pixel red with the 10 pixel radius. Then we can also set the inner HTML of div1 to some text over here. So this is an alternative to basically writing JavaScript where I could have gotten a pointer by to div1 by doing document.getElementById, and then once I had a pointer to that element I could execute JavaScript to set the style. So by calling set attribute directly, we don't need to go through the JavaScript engine. We can set the attributes directly in the DOM by just calling a method of the Chrome object. And similarly, we can set inner HTML, and then you can see here we can also read attributes. So if we go here and we click the get attribute, we're reading the attributes. There are no attributes on that div right now. Then we set the attributes, then we read them, and we can see that we can read the value. So being able to set attributes, set inner HTML, etc. Directly on the Chrome object without having to execute JavaScript is very convenient and also more efficient. Thanks very much for watching.